Newsfirst, face to face with Jamal Ratnayaka.
A very good evening and welcome to yet another episode of Newsfirst's Face to Face. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Jamal Ratnayaka bringing you the show this evening. And joining me this evening is the Executive Committee member of the National People's Power, or the Jatika Janabalawekaya, Chathuranga Abeysinghe. A very good evening, Chathuranga, and welcome to the show.
Good evening. Thank you for the invite.
Certainly. Chathuranga, let's get the ball rolling first on what was happening in Parliament. We know that the 2024 budget was presented, and now the debates on the budget, the second reading and then the committee stage, and thereafter the third reading of the budget will be happening soon. But last week, more of the conversation centered around the Constitutional Council and which branch of either the legislature or the executive, whether the Constitutional Council falls under the executive or the legislature. That was the overarching topic which dominated Parliament last week, even though that budget debate was supposed to happen on those parliamentary sitting days. So President Ranil Wickremesinghe said that the Constitutional Council falls under the arm of the executive, but the opposition rightfully opposed and said that the Constitutional Council falls under the arm of the legislature and acts as a checks and balance between making sure that the president does not misuse the powers that are vested to him in appointing certain key individuals in Sri Lanka's social strata, including judges to the Supreme Court and Appeal Court, the IGP, for instance. Just tell me how the NPP views this, because I don't think any of your parliamentarians expressed their views on the matter, but I want to know from the horse's mouth itself what the National People's Power stands in this particular matter.
Yeah, so basically I think on the speeches within the parliament we have only 3 members, so it's time that it allows us to speak. So this is basically the nature of Ranil Wickremesinghe. So he has been in the ground for 43 years and people are now seeing the true nature of a person who wants so much greed for power. So these the constitutional councils are there to create a balance between the legislature, judiciary and the executive, right? And that was how it has been established, not only in Sri Lanka but in other countries as well. This kind of form is there because when you vest the power only on the executive, it can be misused, right? So
Certainly.
That's the whole problem we had since 1977. If people can't remember why this executive presidency was created to bring neoliberalism to this country, which they failed, which I mean the whole economic system has failed. Now during that process there were a lot of reforms with various amendments to the constitution, starting from 17th amendment, which was a JVP led constitutional change superimposed on Chandrika to get the 4 commissions, right? The public service, the police commission, the independent commission. So these were the structural changes that was to control the power of the executive. And then 18th amendment went against it. Then the 19th amendment brought towards it. So again 20th likewise
deviated from it. Yes.
So I think what Ranil is now, what's happening to Ranil Wickremesinghe, he's getting frustrated because he's under the clutches of port tour and he's seeing the expected changes are not possible. I mean, whatever the actions they took to revive the economy is not happening. And the political instability is increasing day by day. Today I think he sacked one of the ministers.
Yesterday, yes.
The sports minister. So the pressure is coming into him. So his natural Ranil Wickremesinghe is to see whether he can do it himself, to extract whatever the power around him.
Yes.
So I think he's going on the wrong direction. I think Sri Lankans are much smarter. So we have made a very clear call in 2015 saying that we need democracy. For some reason, with lot of campaigns and all that, went away again in 19. But the Aragale also showed that majority of the Sri Lankans are for democracy, and whole of opposition, including NPP, we are for the reforms for democracy, and we would also speak and fight to safeguard the establishments currently there.
Right.
So this he can say it, but it will get challenged in many forms.
I entered this conversation with that particular question because let's put ourselves into President Ranil Wickremesinghe's shoes. In Parliament last week, he said that there was a backlog of many appointments concerning the Supreme Court, concerning the Court of Appeal, the Inspector General of Police, who ensures public security in Sri Lanka. That is vital in Sri Lanka, given the track record of calamities that have happened in Sri Lanka over the past few years. So let's take President Ranil Wickremesinghe's frustration when he keeps on recommending certain positions and people to positions, and the Constitutional Council continues to reject them. Don't you have some sort of sympathy for the president?
So why do you have sympathy for a person who has no public mandate? And I mean, personally, I don't take him as my president in that form, because it was because one is that he could have done a short term and gone for a public opinion and rule. There's no problem, right?
Yes.
So the things that he wants to do today is completely against the mandate of 2019.
Yes.
The mandate people gave was to Saubhagya, right?
Vistas of prosperity.
Yes. And but what he's doing is regaining Sri Lanka 2021. Or even before the neoliberal agenda that has happened to 70 odd countries across the world. So here we should not have any sympathy actually. Now what's really concerning here is the commission is there to make a conscious call on the nominations of the president.
Yes.
And if that was not required, the commission, I mean, we shouldn't have it, right? So it's like the constitution should have said president can appoint all of these things. So then when you nominate someone who's incapable, incompetent, and not beyond the responsibility, which can challenge the responsibilities of the members of the commission, I don't think anybody should have any sympathy, or it has to be objective. I believe they must be having a collective consensus among them why a nominated nominee from president is not suitable for the country, and therefore undue pressure, he has done for the judiciary also. I was the person who went with the petition for EPF,
right,
and just before the date of the hearing to consider the case, he threatened the judiciary saying that you should not interfere with the affairs of economics, right? So this is that's why I said this is the nature. So I think we should sympathize in that sense, because he's a rejected person. The public does not want him anymore, and he's afraid to go into elections. So I think his tenure is another 10 months maximum. So let's sympathize on him.
Let's speak about President Ranil Wickremesinghe's economic vision and the overall vision he has for Sri Lanka. We know he came in with the mandate of the parliamentarians that voted him, that were the parliamentarians who supported former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and now he has embarked on a new mission with a new vision. I believe it is 2040 where Sri 48 where Sri Lanka will be a developed nation. I don't know whether you and I will even be alive by then. I hope so, certainly hope so, to see a developed Sri Lanka. But dissecting budget 2024, because that seems like a precursor to what President Ranil Wickremesinghe and his government envisions for the future of Sri Lanka. I'm pretty sure the NPP has gone into detail, in depth on this budget and the proposals thereof. What sort of pros and cons have you identified? Are there any pros? What are the cons? Tell me about that.
So basically, from a pro perspective, let's start with that. So any government who takes control at this point, we need to manage the mess that we are in, right? So basically, there's a huge crisis of debt, there's lack of revenue, there's high expenditure, but what the budget says is that it can manage, right? So probably it's true or false. They have put a budget to say that they can borrow another 3 trillion rupees of
They have
debt,
increased the debt ceiling, yes.
and they can increase the income by 47% through VAT with tax.
Yes.
And there's not much of a consideration of reduction of cost, and there's inherent burden of interest, which is about 2 trillion. So I think it's a numbers game. What they have done is a numbers game, but there is no strategy around it, because the strategy should have been to increase our production, to help our SMEs, to support our exports, to improve our education, to invest in research and development. These are the things that every country has done to become a developed nation, to take a portion of the global economy. So we don't see anything in that sense. We see 3 things which has happened since 1977. That is the taxing the actually taxing the people who pay tax, you guys and me, and not talking about the people who evaded taxes, not talking about people who has
the affluent sections of society,
the huge tax losses that we incurred over the last 10 years. No discussion about it. So they are going to impose tax on the people who are working, and then the consumers, right, on VAT. So one is high debt, and then debt. So it's taking more loans and selling. I mean, his whole strategy has been to sell anything that he has. So what does it mean? It's very short term, right? So yeah, I mean, we all agree the SOEs has to get restructured, right? Because it has been corrupt, and it's not the structure of the, I mean, it's not the nature of the SOE. SOEs are public held institutions or companies. Across the globe, every country has SOEs, and they are running very efficiently, right? It's the problem of the politics. So, but now what Ranil is trying to do is, whatever the smallest income that we gained through these public institutions, he's starting to sell which are profitable, starting from insurance corporations to SLT to now they are selling the NLDB and the milk production lands,
livestock.
And then I think he has been very much open about land reforms. So there is no strategy to improve our services or production. Now if you take today, I saw articles saying, I mean, they are widening the tax base by all bringing all the industries which was never liable to VAT, right? So this includes software services and software development assets. One side he's talking about AI and
generating revenue through
that, but then again you are discouraging anybody who wants to come into business. And again the SMEs tax rates has now jacked up to 30%. The people who now the agriculture sector is going to get into VAT, and what we don't see is a progressive step to help our industries. Now if you look at all the industries today, they are suffering because these neoliberal policies, what they are going to do is they are going to tax the inputs. Now we have so many value added industries, right? So for example, if you take agriculture, all the agricultural inputs, input machinery is built here. We bring components, but we value add and we create it here. Now they are going to tax the components, the ingredients, and make the equipments tax free, right? And if you take all the construction industry, the electrical equipments, it was value added and supplied from here. And there are so many industries that has sustained production here, which has avoided us importing. Now all those industries are dying now, right? And there is no particular program in this budget to improve. But if you really take, our current problem is what? We have lack of exports and we have high imports,
Yes.
right? So if the next 5 years has to be import substitution and improvement of exports,
Yes.
we don't see any of that. And the fundamental issues of corruption, fundamental issues of non-payment of tax, fundamental issues of not having a clear policy for foreign direct investment, fundamental issues of no democracy in doing business because only few people can do business, fundamental issues of not having a development bank in this country. These proposals are not there.
So let's talk about those fundamental issues. We know, like you rightfully mentioned, there are many fundamental and structural issues in Sri Lanka and its governance as a whole. One thing is state-owned enterprises and the bloated public sector. Those are some of the key issues that Sri Lanka is facing at present.
Issues.
What would an NPP-led government do differently, especially in terms of restructuring, like you mentioned, state-owned enterprises, reducing the public sector, making it more efficient? How would an NPP-led government address these issues through policies that will last for a long time, that will not be changed from government to government? Because that's another key reason where Sri Lanka is where it is, because one government implements a certain policy, the other government comes into power and it completely decimates that policy. So talk to me on that, Chathuranga.
So basically the policy should be agreement between people and the government. I am 40 years old, 20 years into probably voting, and I have never seen a manifesto has been implemented. So that's the problem, right? Why? How would a policy will continue?
Right.
Now say that if we take, so we have put our policies, and I probably will explain. If we take power and people would vote for that policy and we will try to implement it, say that we fail to implement it, and the people should vote for the next team to continue that policy, na?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
There should not be fundamental errors with policy because the world has developed in one single way. So if I can tell you what NPP's policy is, globally, all the economies that developed since 1950, they've chosen what they are good at. They've decided what industries they should be doing. They decided what industries they can't do. And for the industries they can do, because these economies were small, the state infused capital. State infused technology. State got them into the global markets through the ties that you can build upon. Very good example, South Korea. India has done it. Vietnam is doing it. Indonesia is doing it. China has done it. Right? What? Private enterprise doing the business. State is ensuring that they have the capital. They have the manufacturing inputs, and they have the ease of doing business, and also the government is supportive of creating trade agreements and bilateral ties so that our products and services can go into different markets.
The state acts as a facilitator.
So I would come into SOEs. Why does the developing nations need SOEs? Is to provide manufacturing support. So NPP is absolutely clear that we would play a pivotal role in energy, because we think the private oligarchies will not be able to give energy at lowest cost. We are very clear about it. So we want to play a part of it. It will probably not be 100%, but we will play a controlling stake in energy. And also we know that the private financial institutes will never work in the best interest of the nation. Therefore we will hold on to People's Bank and Bank of Ceylon, and we will also create 2 more development banks. This is, if you go into the development theories, these development banks India has, South Korea has, and Vietnam has. Why? Because low cost of capital is what the entrepreneurs need. For a simple example, we are apparel industry at 5 billion, we can't reach further. China is giving at 3% loans to apparel industry in China.
At present.
Technological transformation is happening.
Yes.
So that's how it works, right? And also state will facilitate, or state will play a pivotal role in the transportation, right? So why these three key inputs are very important for our industries to flourish. So that is the strategy of NPP, and we don't want to do industries through the government, right? But when it comes to certain strategic industries are interconnected, right? Now if you take Sri Lanka Telecom, it gives us a profit, plays a pivotal competitive role in the market,
right,
which is very important because technology is a substantial factor for the growth of this nation.
Yes.
At this point as we speak, 80% of the children doesn't have access to technology, and you take the state institute out,
yes,
and do you think the private institutes will go and give internet to the rural areas where there is no demand? It won't work, right? So an insurance corporation. So there are certain SOEs,
right,
which are there to facilitate this growth, and those SOEs, namely 52 there, we would try our best to restructure. We would try our best to work with private sector and do joint ventures. Certain things government will hold,
yes,
right? And we will use all these three mechanisms to restructure. Our proposition is not to sell and get some cash and figure out. That's what Ranil is doing.
Yes.
So there are some, we have very clearly stated, the banking, the energy
industries,
and transportation,
okay,
and essential goods. Government will intervene if the private market is not competitive.
Right.
That is to induce competition only. And we don't have any interest of doing business and all those things. And private sector will do it, and Sri Lankan private sector has done it. The IT industry is private sector, apparel industry is private sector, bulk of the agriculture is private sector. Tourism is private sector. Now even the ports and the trade, the export, the port related services are mostly private sector. So we are okay with that, right? So what we would do is restructure. And when you coming to the question of bloated public service, we need to really understand this is a number game. And if you really take public service, there are a lot of gaps in public service also. Even we have 1.3 million people, state sector workers. Bulk of these state sector workers are the ones who has not even passed O levels, that has been given jobs by the previous regimes.
Yes.
As NPP, we are very clear, we will not throw people away. We will not sack anybody, right? Because it's not their fault.
Yes.
It's the people who ruled, right? So it will take probably 3 to 5 to 8 years for us to right size this. We know it has to get right sized.
Yes.
But there are a lot of vacancies in nurses. There's a lot of vacancies in doctors. There are a lot of vacancies in the executive cadre which we will have to fill.
Yes.
So basically there will be a pace of from today to another 5 to 10 years, eventually this will get restructured, and we are very clear about it.
I want to touch on that. I want to touch on human capital, Chathuranga. Although we are constricted for time, I want to speak to you about brain drain in this country, which is currently a massive crisis amidst all of the other crises that Sri Lanka is facing. The NPP has championed a value and a policy of appointing of meritocracy, of appointing the right person for the right job. But with the mass exodus that we are experiencing in intellectuals, in capable and able young men and women living in this country, how can the NPP champion these values any further? Because we are losing capable and able men and women from this country who can restructure this country, who can develop this country and support the key sectors in this country. How does the NPP plan on addressing that issue?
So the current rulers making it difficult for us, right? That's for sure, right? But are we going to give up? No, right? Now, what the thing that if you would have seen the last 12 months, NPP has been roaming around the world. We have been creating enough public support from the people who has left the country, because we know when we are to build, the investment will come from Sri Lankan expats. We know some of the Sri Lankan expats will come back and work with us.
You're confident on
We
that?
are very confident on that, and people have pledged also. But I am not banking on that. But still, there are a lot of people who are still here. If you put the right policies, right leadership, which organization has worked when the leadership is corrupt? Which private organization has succeeded in the world when the top management is corrupt and knowingly corrupt? I don't think it's going to. So it has to come from top. As soon as we get power, we know within the current government structure there are enough good people who is willing to work. There are retired people as well who would willing to work. And even on the institutions, on the meritocracy, we have a lot of people who has left the country because the living standards are getting poorer and weaker because you earn and the government takes 36%. I mean, I'm talking about the the top notch of professionals, and government is going to take 30% of your income, and government is not providing your child education, government is not providing you health, government is not providing you public transport, so you are taxed heavily. In nutshell, a highly paid executive in Sri Lanka is now paying close to 45% tax. Why? You pay your income tax, you pay your 18% VAT on your consumption, and you pay for your children's education, you pay for health, you pay for transportation, and there's no safety.
Right.
Why would people live here? So as soon as we establish the rule of law, we think not even Sri Lankans, foreigners will also come. That's our vision.
Right.
Because the thing is, the global human capital is mobile, and we don't want to restrict it.
Right.
We are very clear, Sri Lankans can go abroad and work, Sri Lankans go abroad and get educated. People who are educated in those countries can also come here if we don't have enough labor. Right?
Certainly.
If we don't have enough labor.
Right.
So we are very clear about that, but we will continue to invest in education, higher education and innovation, R&D.
Right.
That's our strategy, because globe is winning the world through IP, creating of new knowledge. And Sri Lanka is investing only 0.128% currently on R&D, whereas all the developed nations spend 6% of their GDP, and the developing nations at least spend 3.5% on R&D. That's the problem.
Certainly very startling facts and figures that were brought to you by Chathuranga Abeysinghe, Executive Committee member of the National People's Power. Today's topic of discussion centered around policies and polls, how important it is to have national policies in a country for the future development of the country, for the future generations of the country, where a certain government implements projects and another government simply quashes them and implements their own projects. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. Thank you very much, Chathuranga, for joining me on Face to Face this evening. Thank you for having a very insightful discussion. And to our viewers, take care and good night.